Thank you very much for your patience. We are back and we are live with Growlers forward Scott Pooley. So Scott, you've made the switch, maybe not a permanent one from Fortnite. How's your game coming along in Call of Duty? How we doing?
You know, Bell, I'm finding my way. I started off a little rough, but I think I'm getting the hang of it. We got a good group going, and we grind and we fight for every win, and we don't get many, but when we do, it feels good.
Spoken like a true team player. You gotta love that. I mean, we have to talk about the COVID situation. Us with the Growlers, we were in Brampton, ready to hit the road for Kalamazoo, but you were with the Toronto Marlies at the time. Kind of take us through your couple of days, how your season ended, and kind of sum up that week for us, if you can.
Yeah, so we played. We had a road trip. We were in Bridgeport, and we played on that Wednesday night. I don't know the exact day, but we played on that Wednesday night in Bridgeport, and then Thursday morning we were supposed to bus to Hershey and play in Hershey Friday night. But the bus kind of got delayed until the afternoon, and we didn't really know what was going on. And then we got the news we were busing back, so we went from Bridgeport to Toronto, and then we're self-quarantined in our respective places. I was in the hotel downtown there, and then Monday, I think, following Monday, we just kind of everyone went their own ways and kind of got home before the borders and everything shut down or whatever was going to happen. So it was obviously a whirlwind there, but I mean, it was obviously a weird time for everyone.
No kidding. Well, I don't want to dwell too much on that. Certainly had to figure out kind of how that really impacted you guys. But let's talk about your season with the Marlies away from the Growlers here. 8 goals, 4 assists, 12 points in 30 games. Kind of sum up your first full-time stint, if you will, in the American League. You certainly seem like you made the most of the opportunity.
Yeah, I feel like I settled in nicely. It was obviously an adjustment period. Just jumping up that level. I know I said it before, but it's that next step. So you kind of got to figure out how to play and what works and what doesn't, and what you need to do. So getting the amount of time that I got up there, I was able to kind of figure that out and settle in nicely, and obviously was able to produce a little bit and get comfortable. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of room to build on and stuff, but I'm definitely happy with the way I performed.
You should be. Tom J123 asked, what were maybe the biggest differences you found in the American Hockey League, say, compared to the ECHL level? But my question, I kind of want to hone it in a little further than that. How different is it playing in the American League, knowing you're kind of a full-time guy up there? You're not going up a game or two at a time to try and make an impression. Like, you pretty much got your roster spot. How does that maybe change what you have to do on the ice, knowing that I'm probably going to be here tomorrow to be able to do the same role again?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you never feel completely comfortable, but
Right.
I think it helps you settle in a little bit, just kind of feeling like, or have the confidence to settle in. You're not as jumpy. I know in my first year when I was in Newfoundland, I had my brief call up and things like that. I was a little more jumpy and really hypercritical and kind of focused on not making mistakes rather than playing. So being able to settle in and just be able to kind of find my role and find where I can fit into the lineup and contribute was obviously something pretty exciting and something I really enjoyed.
For sure. And let's talk about your year with the Growlers, as short as it was. Man, you accomplished a lot in a small period of time here with Newfoundland. Let me sum it up for you. All right, in 17 games played, Scott Pooley ended up with the longest goal-scoring streak of all skaters in the ECHL at 8 games, the second longest point streak in the league this season at 14 games, a 4-goal game just before New Year's. I mean, you did everything you could possibly think to do as a member of the Growlers in the ECHL. What went well in your amount of time with us here that ended up with you with the Marlies? Because that's a lot in a short period of time.
I think I got a good number of lucky bounces. There were some great plays that allowed me just kind of an easy job of putting it in the net, and obviously in Newfoundland we have a lot of great players and a lot of players that played with the Marlies this year as well. So it just goes to show the caliber of players we have there, and we're able to work well together. And like I said, a few lucky bounces and a lucky recipient of a lot of really nice plays by other guys. But no, I mean, I loved my time in Newfoundland and obviously was able to have some success and was excited to get to Toronto. But no, it was a fun year with the time I spent
What's be if we never see you in a Growlers uniform again, and hey, for your sake, I hope we never do. Onward and upward from here. I mean, what are going to be some of those memories that you remember and really take to heart? Obviously, the championship, but dig a little deeper for us. What are you going to remember most?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much to forget. I mean, it
I
was
love
just
that.
an unbelievable experience, and I know a lot of guys say the same things, but just the way we're treated within the organization, and then just the city itself and the people and the restaurants, and obviously George Street and the
Never
views.
been.
Me neither. And but no, just I mean the whole experience, I guess what I'll call it, of my time in Newfoundland was second to none, and just the memories, honestly, I think will just be everything. Like there's not one thing you'd be like, oh, I would change that. It's such a special place, and I think it's because of every element and every factor that goes into it. Like I said, the people, the restaurants, the environment, the location. It's a one of a kind type place, and I'm really fortunate and feel really lucky to be able to experience it the way I did.
T-Dog72 in the Twitch chat's a big fan of the lid here. Do you have a favorite Dodger?
No, honestly, I'm gonna be honest. I'm kind of getting exposed here, but I'm not the biggest baseball guy. But I love their logo and I love their uniforms, and I bought a few hats the same style, the black hat, white logo, and I
Classic.
thought this was one of the better looking ones. So yeah, a little bit of exposing me there, but that's okay. I can own it. But no, it's just a great hat.
Darn is I own so many hats, and people are like, "Oh, are you a fan of this team?" No, this is a great hat. That's all I got. It's just sometimes you just need a nice hat. That's all. Recently signed on again with the Toronto Marlies for the upcoming season. One of the first guys to re-sign with the team. Congrats on the new deal. Kind of sum up, why so excited to come back to the Leafs Marlies organization.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. But no, I think it's just a right fit for me. I love the organization. I love everything they're about, the way they work on developing their players, and obviously experiencing and know how we get treated and how they do it top to bottom. It's first class. And no, like I said, it's just a top notch organization, and it's one I feel really fortunate to be a part of. So for them to extend out an offer for me to be there for another year was a really easy decision on my part, and I was really excited to take that job.
Absolutely. And shed some light on that process for us if you can. A lot of people are unsure of kind of the business side, the behind the scenes on how contracts get signed on the dotted line, so to speak. But is that the kind of situation where you and your camp was trying to lock it down early? Was it Dubas and Gilman coming to you? Kind of how does that process work, and why sign so early in the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, looking at it, you have all the factors like Europe and everything, and when interest comes over there, they want to sign you earlier because their season starts sooner, and
Good
they
point.
kind of sign earlier in the year. So, no, talking to my agent, we reached out to Lawrence Gilman and just kind of wanted to get their thoughts, and they came back with an offer. So. I don't know much of the logistics of it. I know I talked to my agent, and then he got back to me and said, "Here's what they're offering," and it kind of just goes from there, and push comes to shove, and I end up signing the deal. But so yeah, I didn't deal with much of it, but I have a really good agent, and I think he's awesome, and obviously he did some good work for me, so can't complain.
No kidding. Uh, Does that mean now, obviously after your first full-time stint, we'll say in the American Hockey League, does that maybe change the goals you set for yourself, say heading into next season, more ice time, top six compared to maybe where you were? Kind of where do you see yourself? What are your goals and hopes, I guess, now into next season, provided there is one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think my goal is to move up and take on a bigger role. I'll be in my third year pro next year, kind of being able to settle in and like I said, just take on any role I can. But I mean, at the end of the day, whatever the team needs me to do and whatever I can do to help the team win is what's important. So as far as personal goals, I don't really have any. If I can contribute, whether it be goals or assists or blocking shots or playing good defensively, like whatever they need me to do is what I'm willing and able to do. So I don't really look at it in terms of milestones or anything like that, but just any way I can play and any way I can help.
Angel here in the Twitch chat is asking, would you ever consider coming back to Newfoundland in the off season for a vacation? I know we do a lot of traveling throughout the season, but clearly Newfoundland's taken a part of your heart. There's got to be some interest to come when the weather's actually good, right?
Yeah, well, I guess that's a two-part question because one, I've heard the weather's good. I've heard you get summer for about 2 weeks.
It's a great couple weeks, though.
Yeah. And then the second thing I've heard George Street Fest is quite the time. So
never been.
Might have to experience a George Street Fest one of these years and get back and just see the friends I made and kind of take in just another Newfoundland experience.
Now we're talking. I like that. So, Scott, we've got you here. We'd be remiss if we didn't kind of poke you a little bit for your memories of our Kelly Cup run together. Before we get into the details, I mean, kind of sum up that crazy season that was. I mean, no one expects a little inaugural season team to win any kind of championship, but son of a gun, the Growlers managed to pull it off. What have you taken away now that we're just over a year kind of removed from that? I mean, what a wild ride.
Yeah, I mean, we just had an unbelievable group, and I think it's just funny because I feel like we knew we were going to win from the beginning of the year. It was just one of those things where it was just like one of those things. We saw the group we had, we saw the depth chart, and we were just, I mean, that was our only focus from beginning to end, and we weren't going to accept anything less. So it was pretty cool. I mean, but yeah, just as the group, I mean, it's rare you get a group like that, and it's a bond we'll share forever now. So obviously it was cool being that first pro hockey championship in Newfoundland and Labrador. And, yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to put into words. It's just one of those things, like, it was so surreal and so special to be able to experience. And it's kind of hard to put words on one special event because as much of it is a blur, you just kind of that overwhelming emotion that you get from the excitement and joy and just sharing that after the long season that we had and the ups and downs to be able to win our last game of the season. It was pretty special.
That right. I'm going to see how much you do remember on this very day in Growlers history. 1 year ago, we were in the Manchester series in the second round. Game 3. That was the first game in Manchester. We split.
3-2.
That's right. We split here at home. We lost game 1, which was weird. We'll get your thoughts on that. But do you have any specific memories specifically to game 3, simply because we're on the anniversary of it here? A 4-2 win. You scored. Michael Gartag made 39 saves. What do you remember? I'm putting you on the spot here, granted, but go ahead.
I remember, I scored. So I remember it was game, yeah, it was a 3-on-2. Rubens drove it up the middle. Or someone, I think Rubens.
You're right. It was Rubens handed off to the left to Kess. He found you coming back across kind of top right circle, I think.
Rubens drove the middle, and I remember I wanted the puck right away, so I was like, oh, man, because he went the other side. But, no, he allowed it out to Kess, and Kess made an awesome play. And the funniest thing I remember about that is I did a little celly, and Pards came down for a high five, and my celly took too long, and I went past him. So you see him, if you watch the replay, you see me come down the wall and Pards comes down like this, and I go zooming past him and turn and give him a high five. But he kind of gets standing left hanging for a second. I remember that. But yeah, I think just as a team, I know we played pretty well that game. It was back and forth a bit, but that was a huge win to go up 2-1. And then I know we won the next game as well. And game 5 was that we played in the Twin Rinks in Exeter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wild.
I mean, that's got to be the weirdest place you've ever played a pro hockey game, huh?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
For the fans who don't remember, this place their building was booked up. I think they had monster trucks or something.
Monster Jam.
I mean, as great an event as Monster Jam is, pretty poor planning on the building's part. We had to move to a community rink, super small and jammed in, and that ended up actually being the last pro hockey game ever in Manchester, and it wasn't even in Manchester, so kind of stinks for them, but certainly a memory, and one of the only losses that series. I remember they won in OT.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what about Monster Jam, though, Bal. I don't know about Manchester, New Hampshire, but Worcester, Massachusetts, Monster Jam is huge.
I went to one as like a kid, and I remember it was really loud, and I didn't get much food because it was probably expensive. So I remember being an upset little fatso when I watched Monster Jam.
You've been to the DCU Center, so imagine Valentine's Day, my sophomore year at school. We went on a whim. It was Valentine's Day at the DCU Center.
Romantic.
Sold out. Monster Jam.
Stop.
Swear to God.
Strange. Maybe I'm missing out on something. Next time it rolls through mile one, I'm going to have to go now. Obviously, I mean, there's so much to pick apart, but let's go through. Last week, we did a deep dive with Marcus Power and the boys about the Brampton series. We'll kind of gloss over that one for the sake of the fans. Let's talk about the Florida series. 2 wins in Florida. Was that maybe the turning point in the whole playoff run to say, yo, this is the reigning Eastern Conference champs. We took 2 in their barn. We're going home. Was that a turning point, or am I just kind of looking for a storyline here?
Yeah, I mean, I think throughout the whole season, the whole talk of the Eastern Conference, it was Florida, Florida, Florida. And we were the new guys on the block, and no one really gave us credit because we hadn't proven anything other than we can win a few regular season games. So I think that, yeah, I think going through the divisional rounds, we knew who we were going up against, and then Florida was obviously a little different. We didn't really know what we were going into. The climate was different and everything, but yeah, I think winning those 2 and then coming home, our mindset was, one, we're not going back to Florida. We were getting it done back in Newfoundland. So yeah, I think getting those 2 on the road was a huge turning point just for our confidence and kind of giving us that last breath or last wind, I guess, to really get through. But yeah, I think that was really the first. I think getting past Brampton was the first one because they were always kind of a tough opponent. And then Manchester, I think it was just a feeling we were going to beat them.
What was our record against Manch that year? I think we only lost to them on like one of the last games of the season, and it was in a shootout. We were like 10-0-1 or something.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't lose.
Yeah, confident. Yeah, I get that.
Year. Yeah. So our confidence was huge going through that. But no, yeah, I think that was a huge turning point for us being able to go on the road against, like you said, the defending Eastern Conference champs and showing that we can hold our own. And that was a really back and forth series, especially down there. But to be able to come home up 2-0 was huge.
And they played a little physical, maybe even borderline dirty a bit in their building. What do you remember? I watched Game 2 pretty much in its entirety today because not a whole lot else to do. It's work. And it really, because we kind of turned up the volume a notch and score. I think it was 4 or 5-1. And then they just started taking cheap shots. They were running darts. What do you remember about kind of the way that all ended? Florida?
It was just, it was an interesting couple games for sure. I think it was a game. So did we lose in Game 3 or Game 4?
Game 3. We were up 2-0 after winning both, came home, lost the game we probably should have won. And then from there on out, it was a show.
Well, I know one game, I don't know if it was Game 4 or Game 5, but we had like 4 or 5 on 3 goals. Like Obi had the hat trick, and it was kind of just insane the amount of penalties that were taken. But at the same time, I mean, frustration sets in, and you can kind of feel your season slipping away. So I understand it, but I think we were happy to take the cheap shots and just go on the power play.
Yes, we were. Was that the easiest series or the series that maybe most favored the Growlers? I know it's almost not fair to do that, but I mean, 5 games compared to 6 the rest of the way around seemed a little easy. 3 shutouts. I don't know. Am I trying to make something out of nothing here?
Yeah, I mean, they were a difficult team in the sense that they played a different style. They wanted to be more goony, more physical, and a little bit like Manchester. Manchester tried to do the same things to an extent, but I think I think playing Manchester in the conference finals helped us learn how to just be a little resilient against it. And then we were ready for Florida when they tried to bully us around a little bit. We were like, all right, if you want to take a penalty, we'll score on the power play. And we didn't really get frustrated. We didn't really get worked up by any means. We just kind of said, okay, and we kept moving.
No, sure did, and moved right on to the Kelly Cup finals. So much to pick apart, obviously, from the finals. We're going to try a couple of overtime games to start. I mean, I want your take on the overtime winner for yourself in Game 2. Let's start there. That game, both those games at home to start that series were an absolute war. So close. Pulled out a couple of really close wins. And take us through your goal in particular as you remember it, the OT winner.
Yeah, and it was off the face off, and I know Hudson got a pretty good look on a shot. I rolled the rammer around the corner, went up to I think Meller on the point, and he cycled it down. I pitched it. I tried to change sides with it. It was a little too hard for Geo, and they tried to clear it out, and Hudson just kind of caught it. They tried to flip it at the blue line, and Hudson caught it and threw it to me. And I saw Geo opening up for the one timer, so I tried to slide it to him, and their back checker just got there and swiped it away from him, but kind of passed it right to me, and I threw it, I think, between the D-man's legs, and the goalie just missed it. I didn't really see it go in, but I saw the light go on, and then the lights went off, and I had no idea what was going on, and it was just pure excitement.
That was Dean McDonald's in the chat. He says that's the famous logo grab. Was it not? That was the Selly of all Sellies. If we had to do a Selly countdown, that's got to be number one.
I don't know. I think I got a little crap for it because I skated through a couple guys to do it. But I like I said, I didn't really know what was going on in the moment. I was just so excited.
It's just blackout level excitement.
Yeah, it was just such an exciting moment, and we were up 2-0 in the finals.
Was there a turning point in the finals? Because that was another real close, even series. Was there a point at the finals where you said, like, we're actually going to do this? We have that confidence. Did we have it all along? Kind of, what was the TSN turning point, if you will?
I think getting game 2 after that such back and forth game that it was, that was like, all right, we had a feeling that we were like, all right, we're close. And then after experiencing game 3 and then winning game 4 in Toledo, we were like, all right, that's when we knew we were doing it. It was game 5. We could have won it. It was a back and forth game, and then coming home, having 2 cracks at the trophy, we knew we were getting it.
Absolutely. So game 6 was an absolute blur, top to bottom, but pulled it out. I mean, what do you remember about game 6 in general?
I mean, I just remember the atmosphere was electric. It was unbelievable. I think the build up, the anticipation, the excitement within the fans and the community, it was second to none. Honestly, it was unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, I know we were up. Was it 4-0, 4-1?
4-1.
We were up 4-1, and then I know they scored and then scored again, and I was like, oh no.
Because that's what happened in game 1 to force overtime too, as I'm sure we all remember.
I know I missed an empty netter. It bounced over the net.
I was going to get to it. Dean asked the question. The empty netter that wasn't. Have you ever seen a puck? Okay, it literally bounced over the net, did it not?
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it, but I was glad we were able to pull that one out because that might have haunted me had it gone differently.
I had almost called it a goal. If you go back and listen to it, that puck misses that net one time out of 1,000, and that was that.
I had my hands in the air bell.
You and me both. I don't know what to tell you, but hey, it didn't matter. I mean, you got enough empty netters anyway. But I mean, and talk about even just the parade and the whole kind of couple of days after, before everyone went home, just actually getting to enjoy it. I mean, those have to be some memories that are certainly going to stay with you.
Yeah, I mean, the whole week was awesome. I mean, it was just carrying the trophy around to whichever establishment we decided to stop into. And, yeah, I mean, like you said, it was a bit of a blur, but just kind of concluding and having the culmination of the season be that parade and have the fan turnout that we did there on George Street. And it was a pretty cool thing. And to have Pards kind of wrap up his career with a title, I think that's one of the best things I'll remember. I don't know if he'll be mad at me or not, but I remember after we had won and in the locker room, we were kind of in the hallway and everyone was kind of walking around. The initial celebration was over and guys were kind of changing and showering up and stuff. And I remember walking past Pards and his family, and he was just telling his family like he finally did it. He finally got one. And just kind of to be able to experience that with him after everything he'd been through, not only that year, but just his whole career, it was something pretty cool. And it was one of those things I'll never forget.
No kidding. Wow. No, that's cool, especially for someone like Pards. You know, we've seen him, you know, in the NHL for a long time. To see him come home like that and finally win one, and and have it be real. You know, there with the family. I did it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Any last memories or any last questions we got here for Scott Pooley before we let him go? Scott, well, obviously for you, I mean, anything left in the tank? Any other stories? Anything else that you're gonna take with you on your next stage of your hockey journey?
I mean, I'll take everything, honestly. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to put like a story on one piece in time or anything, because it's such a long season. To be able to kind of do it the way you do it, travel wise and everything with everyone, it's super special. So, like I said, obviously I love my time there, and I'm thankful for everyone I've met along the way and all the support that I got and still receive from everyone who lives in Newfoundland and Labrador. You can't really put it into words. I'm just really thankful to be able to experience it the way I did, and it's one of those things that I'll carry with me for life.
Absolutely, and we'll carry the same memories of yourself. Scott Pooley, thank you so much for jumping on with us here tonight. All the best moving forward, and again, if we don't see you again back here on the Rock, all the best with the Marlies this upcoming season. We'll all be keeping an eye on you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bell. Thanks for having me on, guys.
And we'll be back shortly after a short break. Please enjoy a little game cooked up by our own John Long, guest the Growler, and we have Jason Jaffray, former captain of your Ice Caps, coming up next. Don't go anywhere. And thanks for all your patience, folks. We had to squeeze in a wardrobe change. You may see I am now sporting the colors of and the number and the big captaincy of our very special guest, who needs no introduction, but he's going to get a doozy. A veteran of 49 NHL games and over 600 in the American Hockey League, back to back to back. 3 times he was a champion in the DEL in Germany and one of the greatest leaders to ever set foot on Mile 1 center ice. Everyone, please join me in welcoming former Ice Caps captain Jason Jaffray to the program. Jaff, thanks for coming on and doing this with us. So happy to have you here.
Oh no, I appreciate the introduction. Wow, I think you practiced that one. That's
I did. I have a lot of time on my hands. There's no doubt about that. What about you? I mean, how are you holding up? Everyone safe and sound at home?
Yeah, everything's good. I'm back in Olds, Alberta, just outside of Calgary right now. Kind of the abrupt end to our season. They rushed us back out of Germany, right back into Canada as soon as possible. But my family was back at home already. So it was actually, I wasn't expecting to get back until probably May 1st. But the family was excited to have me back almost 2 months early. So it was to have to quarantine with your wife and kids for 2 weeks.
I know, it's terrible, right?
It's kind of just what the doctor ordered. So I can't complain. Life's pretty good right now.
No, certainly. And before we go any further, I, on behalf of all of us who remembered what you did for us here in St. John's, congratulations on a heck of a professional career. Just summed it all up with your final season in Munich with the Red Bull. I mean, kind of sum it up for us, you know, now that you're, not too far removed from the playing career now, but I mean, you've got it. You should be very happy with the career you've managed to pave for yourself.
Yeah, the last year and a half for me or the last 2 years was a little bit of a struggle. I was going through a little bit of a hip injury, and I ended up having hip surgery at the end of last season. And so I didn't know whether or not I was going to be able to kind of end my career the way I wanted to, healthy on the ice and playing well. And luckily, I had a great surgery, seen some great doctors, kind of got back to where I needed to be to end my career on the ice and scoring goals and being productive. And that's just what I did for my last 3-4 months of the season. It was incredible. It was a great way to kind of end the season, other than the playoffs being canceled and because of the coronavirus. So it was kind of a catch-22 where, yeah, it was great to be back and healthy and be able to retire when on the ice, but not knowing that it was going to be my last game and the season coming to an abrupt halt was a tough way to retire also.
No, certainly it was. But, 5 years you were with Red Bull Munich, 3 championships. You were named their Player of the Year this year. Talk about the difference, I guess, between playing North American hockey. You know, you left St. John's and headed right to Munich for the next part of your journey, I guess. Kind of sum up the main differences and maybe what was most challenging for yourself.
Well, I think the biggest challenge going over there was getting my family comfortable. Anybody that knows me in St. John's knows that I put a lot of emphasis to where I play according to where my family is going to be comfortable. Both my kids were in school. My son, it was his first year of school. So not only am I changing locations, moving the family across the world, but my son's going to an international school in Munich for the first time in his life.
Wow.
So I was very fortunate to sign with the Red Bulls in Munich. The team was very well run. They had lost out in the first round of the playoffs the year before, so they kind of went through a little bit of a shakeup, bringing in a lot new import faces. And I was lucky enough to fall into a city where there's a lot of English being spoken. My head coach was from Kansas City. My assistant coach was from Minneapolis. So I really didn't know what to expect going over there. I didn't know if everybody was going to be speaking German, if I was going to be a stud going over there, or if I was going to be a dud. I mean, there's great players that go from North America, go over to Europe, and just can't make it click. The ice is bigger, the players are different, the coaching's different, and I went over there and I scored. I still hold the DEL record. I scored 8 goals in my first 8 games to start my first season.
No big deal.
Yeah, and so it was. I just kind of took off right from the start, and I won Player of the Month in my first month over there. And that was the first season, not only was it my first championship, but it was Red Bull Munich's first championship. So it was a huge deal. It was a huge deal. Something that once I put my career highlights kind of on a list, that first championship is always there, right? That first championship, being able to lift that cup, the parties, the celebrations, the parades after. I mean, watching the Growlers win a couple of years after we won was exciting, but also sad for me, because I know how close we were in 2013 and 2014, and how crazy that season was, and how crazy the fans would have been if we would have been able to beat Texas in the final. So it was, I mean, I'm still in a group chat with a bunch of the old Ice Cap guys, Blair Riley, John Albert, Zach Redmond, all those guys. We still stay in touch. We actually had a reunion last year at Blair Riley's cabin in
no.
All Ice Cap guys. Even Scott McLeod, our trainer, showed up for it.
No way. My invitation must have got lost in the mail. I guess so. I mean, we got a few questions in the chat we'll get to. Tom J123 asks, how much Red Bull did you drink over your course of the 5 years?
Well, you know what? If you talk to anybody that knew me in St. John's, I was a big Red Bull drinker before I got to Red Bull Munich. So I remember times where I had Shaq running across the street before a game because I needed a Red Bull before the game, and he'd run to the gas station, grab me something, and then come back. Or Ian Cox was the other trainer at the time.
That's right.
He would run across, and they always took care of me. And we had free Red Bull. I mean, there was coolers everywhere you went. Anytime you took a picture online, they wanted a can in the picture, right? So they took care of us. Like I said, that franchise over there in Munich is known for taking good care of their players, and I was very fortunate to land there.
No, absolutely. So I can only assume that meant you got to travel around a little bit based out of Munich. What were some kind of cool places you got to take in, either in your hockey travel or in your free time? Because that's not a bad home base.
Yeah, so the best thing about Europe that a lot of players don't really realize is you get 2 week-long breaks throughout the year where everything shuts down. There's one in November and one in February where the national team goes and they practice, and Finland plays versus Germany, and Germany plays Russia, stuff like that. Kind of like a world championship warm up for those national team players.
Cool, okay.
And we always had 4 or 5 German national team players on our team, so our team would shut down completely, and you'd have 7 days to go travel go. We went to Paris, we went to Rome, we went to Barcelona was one of my favorites that we ever visited. Something that I never ever envisioned being able to do. I mean, my family went to Greece, Athens, but another very cool part of playing for Red Bull Munich is, I'm not sure how much people in North America really realize the Champions Hockey League. And the Champions Hockey League is the top 2 or 3 teams from every league around Europe playing one big tournament throughout the season. And it's, if you lose out in the first round, you're out. But over the last 5 seasons, we've been very successful. We lost out in the finals 2 years ago, but I've had the chance to be able to go to Helsinki, Finland, to Stockholm, Sweden, to little tiny hole-in-the-wall places in the Czech Republic that you never thought you'd be to, that Jaromir Jagr's pictures and stuff are everywhere. He's an absolute legend there. I've been to Krakow, Poland, which was a city that was a great city that I'd never even heard of before. So, I mean, I was, like I said, before I went over to Germany, I had never been to Europe, never been to anywhere overseas. I had just been a North American guy that had, I mean, my vacation spot was Mexico or it was Cuba, right? I mean, I wasn't I wasn't very well traveled. So being able to go over there and being in Germany, which is so centralized, I mean, I got to go and spend a week in Switzerland at the top of this St. Moritz, it was called, this rich ski hill that we played outdoor games at against all these other teams. Like it was a phenomenal experience. When people ask me about it, I always tell them, you know what? I almost wish I would have went over a year or 2 earlier.
I totally get that.
Because when I took off from St. John's, my last season, I wasn't under an NHL contract. And so there was never that being able to get to the next step, go to the NHL. I was under an NHL contract, and it was tough motivation wise, especially because I broke my arm the first game of the season, and I was out until November. I remember that. I think it was in Providence that I ended up getting hurt, and we really struggled that last season I was there. We didn't re-sign any of our veterans from our Calder Cup run the year before, and I had some options in Europe at the time, but I thought, you know what, I was so close to that Calder Cup championship that I wanted to give it one more shot. Even though I wasn't on that NHL contract, I wanted to give it one more shot, and it just wasn't in the books. But like I said, being able to land over in Germany was one of the best things and best ways to end my career.
No, I can certainly see that, but now that gives a perfect opportunity to do a bit of a deep dive into your Ice Caps memories here. What I want to know is, before you even set foot in the great province of Newfoundland and Labrador, the team was just kind of cooking. You were, at that time, I believe, on an NHL deal with Winnipeg, but what was the conversation like when you first found out, all right, you're going to go and be the captain of this brand new team as far east as you can go in this continent without getting wet? What was your reaction, and what was maybe your first thoughts about coming to Newfoundland?
Well, first of all, I know a couple of really good friends of mine are Newfies. Guys over here, a lot of people travel back and forth, and they've married a couple Alberta girls, and they've stayed over here. So, I mean, I know two guys that I just call Noof. Like, that's their name, right? So I've heard all about these provinces, that this province in Canada that I've never traveled to. I mean, unless you have a reason to go to Newfoundland, not a lot of people make it a vacation spot or go there.
Exactly.
And when I talk to people now, I say, if you get a chance, go to this province. Go to this city, experience this city, because it is like no other. It is something where you can go in and you feel like you're in a different country, because the people speak differently, they treat you differently, and really you can go around and travel around St. John's for 3-4 days, and you will have the absolute time of your life. It is, and that's what I tell people. And I know it's not cheap to get to St. John's, because you got to fly over there, you got to connect flights, stuff like that, but it's a city that I had an absolute blast in. And I mean, like you said, when I got that first phone call from Keith McCambridge, was our head coach at the time, and he said that I was going to be captain of the team, it was a very cool experience, because I was always a leader for my teams, but I always played under Nolan Baumgartner, Mike Keane, or these big famous leaders that I learned a ton from, but I never got to wear that C on my jersey. So when Keith McCambridge called me into his office and said, you're going to be the St. John's Ice Caps' first ever captain, I mean, it still makes the hair stand up on my arms. It was a very cool experience.
No, absolutely. What else have I got here for you? Just last night, the American Hockey League on their YouTube channel showed Game 5 of the 2014 Calder Cup Finals. Were you aware, and would you have watched it?
Oh, that's a tough question. Because I had a chance to score in overtime in that game, and I don't know if I really wanted to see that again. So I would have definitely watched it. I was not aware that it was on. I would have definitely watched it. Like I said, that group of players, guys like Brennan Kishton, Jordan Hill, John Albert, guys that I still stay in contact to this day. That was such a special group. And I mean, I know we lost out in the finals, but that group it feels like a group that I won with, because we've stayed so close over the years.
That's awesome.
I would have definitely watched it. I would have given Jordan Hill a hard time for getting dangled on the overtime goal, but hopefully he's not watching this right now. But
I'll make sure to text him later. He's one of the few guys from that team I kept up with. So I'll be sure to play the snitch there for you. I kind of want to go through that bit of a run there. On this day in St. John's Ice Caps history, 6 years ago to the day, 1-0 win in Game 3 over the Albany Devils. Cale Mullarat had the only goal, and Michael Hutchinson had the shutout. How good's your memory? Do you remember anything about that game?
I don't remember that game. I remember Hutchinson being an absolute wall for us, though.
Unreal, hey?
He was, you know what? We had a great team that year, but when he went from the East Coast Hockey League, like backup goalie, to being our starter at Christmas, I'm not even really sure what happened to, I think Pasquale was our starter at the time, but he had a knee injury, was out for the season, and we really had to lean on somebody to kind of pick up the slack. And I think it was one of his first games. He came in and absolutely, I think we only lost a handful of games after Christmas for the rest of the season. Like we were definitely the best team in the league at that time from Christmas on. And throughout the playoffs, I remember, I don't remember the Albany series a ton. I remember the Norfolk series a ton, though. I remember, was it John Gibson was the goalie then?
I was going to say, because he was standing on his head, and then he got called up.
Yeah, Anaheim was in the playoffs, and their goalie went down. I can't remember which goalie of theirs went down, but that was, you could have flipped a coin whether or not they were going to beat us, or, I mean, they had some studs on that team. I can't remember exactly who they had, but John Gibson was their guy. And I remember game 1 and game 2, he absolutely stood on his head. And I think we snuck out one game. They beat us one game. And then I think he got called up for game 3 or game 4. I can't remember what it was. And yeah, that was just the what we needed to be able to get by them. It was, I mean, that was probably the toughest series other than the finals, I thought.
Wow.
In my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. I don't disagree.
But when you run into a goalie of that caliber, I mean, you see what he's doing for the Ducks now. I mean, you just hope to sneak a game out here or there because he can steal a game or two for them. And that's what he was doing. And then we just got lucky enough that he got called up at the time and we kind of took over. I think that was my last ever playoff goal was against John Gibson. I remember. All
right. Well, if you're going to go out, might as well get one by him.
Exactly. So it was, I have a pretty good recollection of that whole, I remember who we had played throughout the 4 series. And I remember that Texas team just being phenomenal, though. They had a lot of good young studs. And I still, guys like Ranford, he played in the DEL this year in Berlin. And I still have, every time I get to finish a check on a guy, I kind of give a little extra to him just because I remember him back in the day being a little bit of a rat for Texas and playing very well against us. So
that's great. So the next series was Wilkes-Barre Scranton. All I can remember is game 6 at home, packed house, Mile One Center. What was it, 6-0 in game 6? Just an absolute rout to move on to the final.
That was one of the loudest I have ever heard the Mile One Center in that game. That was a phenomenal game. We always seemed to have great battles against Wilkes-Barre. That was always a team that we always seemed to run into in important situations or in the playoffs or whatever it was. We just didn't like each other. Nobody liked each other from those teams. And I don't know if it's changed nowadays. I feel like the hatred isn't quite there like we had back in those days. Maybe it's because I was in the battle at the time or what it was, but I feel like that series alone was one of the roughest and toughest ones, probably out of those all 4 series. Texas was more of a skill team, but Wilkes-Barre, they were willing to wear you down. They wanted to wear you down. They had some big bodies out there that were finishing their checks and in your face, punching you in the face after with stuff like that. And it was a tough series. And it was, I just remember that deciding game and how loud it was and how excited we were because I mean, I was obviously the oldest guy on the team, but I had made it clear to those guys that these opportunities don't come along all the time. I mean, I had played 11, 12 years at that time, and this was going to be my second chance at a Calder Cup. And because I had lost out in 2007 when I was with the Manitoba. And so everybody kind of knew how important not only it was for me, but to everybody else that might not get that opportunity. And like I said, when we went to Blair Riley's cabin here last summer, that was one of the talks was everybody just thought like those young guys, Brendan Kitchton, I'm not sure if it was his first or second year, but he just thought that was a regular, that he was going to be back. He was going to have a chance at another championship, right? Like we just thought that team's going to stay together forever. And we didn't get it this year, but we're going to get it next year. And then
not quite as easy as that.
Well, these guys realize everybody has a good season. Well, everybody then gets great offers from all these different teams. We lose Andrew Gordon. We lose this guy. We lose that guy, right? I mean, Zach Redmond gets an NHL one-way off. I mean, Michael Hutchinson, right? Like all these guys carved out some NHL games and some NHL careers because of that season. And
Absolutely.
I think a lot of those guys kind of realized that years later how important that season was, not only to us, kind of the success we had, but for the rest of their careers. Those guys got some great contracts out of that, right? I mean, Cale Mullerath came out of nowhere. He was we didn't know about this guy. He got called up, and him and Eric Odell absolutely got on fire. Those two were phenomenal together, no matter who you put on their right side, whether it was Carl Klingberg, Josh London. I mean, whoever you mixed in with those guys seemed to be successful. And then you had myself, Andrew Gordon, and John Albert, who is still one of my all-time favorite lines I ever played with, were those two guys with me. They were both, I mean, we mixed so well together. John Albert had the speed that kind of created the space, and Andrew Gordon, I mean, he's still playing over in Europe. He's a guy that could take a one-timer from any position in his hockey stance, and you throw the puck into his corner, he's going to come out with it. He's a guy that's going to work and battle hard. And so it was kind of just the perfect combination for us. And we were lucky enough to stay healthy and put together a lot of good lines up and down. I remember, I mean, Jerome Sampson was on our line through the playoffs, and he was a 30-goal scorer. Like that's how deep we were. And that's what makes teams good. It's not about one player or two players. It's about having all four lines and being able to, if the first line gets shut down while the third line scores 2 goals and wins us that game. And that's what the St. John's Ice Caps were all about that year.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And then in the finals, 3 overtime losses back to back at home. Those are not the memories we want to relive, but those are the ones that are going to be the ones that stick with the folks here on the Rock. Kind of, what do you take away maybe the home side of that final series? Because that could have been so different on one play, could have changed the whole outcome. Yeah. You can't live in regret like that. But what do you remember about those games at home?
Well, I remember game 1 in Texas, first of all. Michael Hutchins stole us game 1. And we hadn't seen Texas all year. So that was the first time we had seen Texas. So we sat down after the game and we said, okay, that's the best they got. They threw 53 shots, 52 shots at Michael Hutchinson, and we won. I can't remember the score, 1-2-1 or 3-2 or something. But we knew, like, we were in trouble. Like, this is the best we've seen. But we got Michael Hutchinson, and that's what everybody said. Our goalie is better than their goalie. We just need to match what they can do. This is going to be a coin flip of a series. And you look back at it, and it was a 5-game series, but three straight games in overtime is heartbreaking. And I mean, the guys still give Patrice Cormier a hard time about
that breakaway right out of the penalty box. You don't have to remind me. I remember.
And then 2-3 minutes later, boom, it's back in our net, right? I mean, and that's just how fast
that's the game, though.
Turn around, right? And I mean, that's something that he'll remember for the rest of his life. We still, I mean, like I said, I still have a group chat that comment gets thrown out all the time, and he doesn't find that too funny. But it was such a good group of guys, and you wish you could have won that championship, but I wouldn't have changed it for anything because we've stayed very close, that group, and like I said, those 3 games. I remember tidbits where I had a chance to score in game 5. Cormier had a chance with a breakaway. Did we deserve to beat that team? It's tough to say. They were probably
answer that question.
Yeah, they were probably the better team overall, but really, you could have flipped a coin. True. I mean, that year we had Josh Morrissey, we had Adam Lowry. I mean, you look at our lineup up and down, it was phenomenal. And I would have put that lineup against any other American Hockey League lineup that I ever played with or against, and we would have been successful. So I'm lucky to say that I was a part of that group and a big part of that organization for all those years. And I got a lot of very good memories.
And that very same year, the American Hockey League hosted the All-Star Game in St. John's. You were not only on that team, you were its captain. Sum up that experience. I mean, what an unreal year that was for St. John's, for the Ice Caps, and I assume for yourself.
It was an absolute. I remember going home for the summer and just thinking, I could quit now and be happy for the rest of my life. Like, I mean, yeah, I didn't get the Calder Cup, but I was captain of the All-Star game. Not only captain of the All-Star game, but in front of my own fans. And then, I mean, the skills competition, I got to tie up the game with in the breakaway competition, tie it up to send it to extra shooters. And then I thought to myself, you know what? I don't want to do anything more. This is exactly how I want this to end. So I sent Hoffman. I sent, I can't remember the big Toronto Marlies defenseman. I sent like 3 of our studs to go shoot. They all missed. And all of Sweden's shooters all missed. And I was like, all right, I mean, I need to get here.
Can't find any good help. I'll have to do it myself.
And so I was like, okay, great. I'm going to jump back in here, see what I can do. And lucky enough, I put her under the bar on their goalie, and it was definitely a storybook ending. And I mean, I was in the fastest skater. I was a 32-year-old going against a 17-year-old at the time. And
that's right.
ended up winning that. I was in the accuracy competition. I think I went 4 targets and 6 shots or something along those lines. So everything kind of fell into line.
No
I had my
kidding.
son on the bench. I mean, the video kept going from Sportsnet to my Jackson on the bench, and he's 3 years old with his fingers up in
that's
the air.
awesome.
He's got the mohawk. Like, it was just everything that could have went right that season, other than the Calder Cup.
Right.
Went exactly the way I wanted it. My family was comfortable. My wife had a great job working at Key City Gymnastics in St. John's.
Awesome.
And my daughter was so happy in school. And it just, yeah, it was, my 4 years in St. John's were absolutely phenomenal.
Amazing. So I have to ask, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, given your connection, obviously a true one here to the province, what was your reaction when you heard St. John's was getting a team back? It was an ECHL team, a place where you did spend a couple of years, and then not just coming back, but the Growlers winning a championship in the inaugural season, bringing home a championship. Unfortunately, no American League team in this city could do. Kind of what was your reaction? Did that find its way to your radar? I know you were obviously busy and overseas and all that, but kind of what was your reaction?
I was following it all year, honestly,
Awesome.
through the playoffs. I mean, I connect to all their Twitter and their Facebook and everything, and I followed it. And actually, when they won, I had trained when I was in St. John's. I trained with Zach O'Brien a little bit. I sent him a message, congrats, and like I said, like, congrats on the championship. Wish we could have done the same, but glad to see that you guys did it this way. And I was actually one of my second or third years pro. I played with Ryan Clough. And
I was gonna about that at 03-04 with Cleveland. Am I right?
Yeah. And he was a lineman. I played with him and Marcel Gotch for 20, 25 years that year. And we were the worst team in the league, but we were all young. We were all kind of building our careers from there. And we were the top line at the time, but I think we won 16, 17 games all season that year. But now you look back at it and you're like, wow, that team was filled with NHL players. And we had kind of, I mean, I shouldn't say they worked up in the East Coast Hockey League because they were NHL draft picks and stuff. But I had worked up from a year in Roanoke was my first year, and 2 years in Wheeling, West Virginia, which I was very successful in every year that I had played in the East Coast Hockey League. So I kind of had that connection of the East Coast. And knowing what kind of hockey it is. I know some people, when they talk about the East Coast Hockey League, are like, oh, no, that's not great hockey. And I'm like, well, pump the brakes here. Like, I've played here for 3 years. And, I mean, yeah, it might drop off the last couple of players, but it is still great hockey. Every great player, there's a lot of great players that worked up from the East Coast Hockey League and worked their way through the American League, like myself. I mean, just some guys that I talked to recently in Alexander Burrows, who's got his number up in the Vancouver Canucks arena now, like East Coast guy that I battled with for years for my first couple of years. And Michael McKenna, a guy that just a goalie that just
great example.
He's an East Coast guy that battled his way up through the system also. And I tell people now, I said every hockey player should have to play a year in the East Coast Hockey League.
Preach, my friend, preach. It's such a good, I mean, that was my next question. Yeah, no, please continue. That was going to be my next question. I mean, how much credit do you give to, say, your time in Roanoke and in Wheeling to help turn you into the player you ended up being?
Well, those guys there, they don't make a whole lot of money. First and
That's a
foremost,
fact.
like I mean, back when I was there, I was making $500 a week minus taxes. So I was coming home every week with $375.
Wow.
And I know it's kind of improved a little bit now. The
For sure.
salary cap's gone up, but not much. It's gone up a few $1,000, and that was 15 years ago when I played there, right? So it was something where I learned a ton from. I mean, my first coach, Perry Florio, I still remember his name. I played on a line with Dylan Giori and Rick Kowalski, who was the assistant coach for the Devils this year, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Or a head coach. I'm not even sure. He was with the Devils.
Yeah.
And he was a 32, 33-year-old all-star from the season before. And I got on line with those guys, and just everything started going in. Well, back then, it was a rough league, too.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I learned that I needed to learn how to fight, and I needed to be able to protect myself because I was leading the league in scoring. Well, people weren't happy with that as being a rookie, right? So not only did I learn the aspects of becoming a pro, living by myself, learning how to cook for myself, which didn't go well. But I was also learning that I needed to be tougher. I wasn't going to be that skill player like I was through the Western Hockey League. I mean, I fought in the Western Hockey League, but I wasn't known as a guy that could handle his own all the time, right? So, I mean, East Coast is going to toughen you up a little bit. And, I mean, that's back when there was, 6'4", 6'5" defensemen chasing after you all the time, right? So, but the thing about the East Coast Hockey League is there was the older group that was there that was happy being there. But I was that young guy that came in that I didn't want to be there. I wanted to get to the next level.
For sure.
And I knew that to get to the next level, I needed to be the best on my team. And I had, like I said, this Dylan Giori, who was a Tri-City absolute legend. He's a Red Deer boy. And Rick Kowalski were kind of mentoring me through the way. And they were older guys that kind of their time had already Kowalski's time had already gone, but Giori was still trying to make a push up. But they kind of helped me become a professional, and everybody can look back at their career and say, this guy helped me a ton. Like I look at Mike Keane and learning how to be a captain for Mike Keane in Manitoba and Nolan Baumgartner and players like that. I put Rick Kowalski right with those guys, even though he's an East Coast captain. He taught me a ton. And guys like that help you out through your career. And I tried to tell myself, I want to be that guy when I get older. I want to be. And so when I was with St. John's, I knew those guys. I mean, my time was gone with the Winnipeg Jets or the Vancouver Canucks, and I wanted to help guys like Cale Mullarat play games with the Islanders or Zach Redmond play games with the Colorado Avalanche. And that's what I took a lot of onus on, was helping those guys get to the next level and learn how to be professional. You can go have fun and have a good time on George Street as long as you're being a professional. And you pick your time to do it. You pick your time to go for a beer here and there. But when it comes down to it, you're a paid hockey player, and you need to act as a professional when it comes down to it. And as fun of a city as St. John, I know a lot of people struggle with that because there's the temptations of going for beers every night of the week and having
so easy.
Whether it's a Monday or a Saturday night, I mean, St. John's is a good time. And,
darn right.
And so it was. We did that very well. I thought we had a blast. Not going to lie to you, we had a blast in St. John's, but we did it very professionally and tried to keep us. And that's part of the learning process of becoming a professional. And it's a little bit tougher being in St. John's. You have those temptations all over the city.
No, certainly you do. Do you have any favorite coast stories or moments in the ECHL? Because especially when you were coming through, I mean, you mentioned it, that wasn't yesterday. I'm not trying to age you by any stretch, but the league was certainly different. These are long bus trips. These are, I mean, it's the not so pretty side maybe of professional hockey. Do you have any like true gritty coast stories?
You know what? I wish I knew the tough guy's name that I had in Wheeling with me. He was in those battles in they had him on TV in the summer. I can't even remember what they were called. They were held in British Columbia. And it was just literally Battle of the Fists, or I can't remember what it was called. But he was on our team in Wilkes-Barre, and our coach had called me in. He said, "Hey, I see you're getting pushed around a little bit out there. We're going to bring in this guy to kind of help protect you. And I was like, hey, like more the merrier. Like, I mean, in the East Coast Hockey
Bring
League,
him on.
it's kind of open game. If
That's
you're
par for the course for sure.
I'm after you, sure. And so they brought in this guy, and one guy whacked me off the opening face-off of the one game. The next game we played him, he didn't even look. He didn't even ask the guy to fight. Jumped him off the draw and just said, "That one's for Jaffray." And this guy ended up being one of my best buddies. I mean, same with another guy in Wheeling, TJ Reynolds. He was an all-time East Coaster. He was a captain down I think in Greenville for a long time. But this guy, he took care of me. There was guys that, I mean, they knew that I was one of the top players on the team. And this guy, I mean, if a guy ran me over, if they were taking exception to me, guys like this protected me and let me keep doing what I could do. And I remember going to the bar after the game for a beer, and I would just pick up this guy's bar tab and just be like, this guy took a couple punches in the face for me tonight. I got his beers, or they're on me.
Damn right. I love that.
And there was the guy, I can't remember the guy's name from Wheeling. It's going to come to me after I hang up with you. But this guy he wasn't just tough. He was crazy. Like, he was crazy tough. And I remember he came over to our place, and I said, hey, I just need to run to the gas station. Can I borrow your car? And so he's like, yeah, threw me the keys. And I went down to go run to the gas station. I jumped in the car, and I could barely move the steering wheel. And I'm like, man, like something's wrong here. I'm not pushing a button. I'm in the wrong gear. Like, I'm checking the safety brake, whatever. And I get to the gas station. I come back. My arms are sore just from turning the steering wheel. And I'm like, I go back up there. I throw the guy the keys, and I'm like, what's up with your car? Like, I can barely move your steering wheel. He's like, yeah, I took all the power steering fluid out of my car so I could work on my arm muscles as I drive.
What?
I'm thinking, this guy is absolutely absurd. Like, absolutely absurd. But he was that guy that when he was on the ice, you kept your head down and you did not say a word. This guy was, I mean, I remember going to the gym with him, and there'd be a punching bag there that had huge signs that say no kicking the bag. And this guy was running drop kicks and tackling this bag. And like, there's stories that, I mean, in the East Coast Hockey League, a lot of the teams, the owners own apartment buildings, and then they put the whole team in the apartment building because it's cheaper for them. And
exactly.
And so, I mean, the amount of stories that came out of there, gym stories, and it was just, that's why I tell people, I said, every player should have to play at least a few months, maybe a season down the East Coast Hockey League, because, yeah, it was probably the lowest hockey I played because I moved up to the AHL and NHL after.
Sure.
But it was one of the funnest couple of seasons that I ever had. You enjoy the game. There's no pressure. Everybody's having a good time. And it was just hockey at its finest. It was literally hockey at its finest, where for the love of the game, it was, guys, there was no pressure to, oh yeah, there's scouts in the stands here. There's scouts. I mean, if I score a hat trick tonight, I'm going to get called up. There was none of that for me. It was, I played because I loved the game. I was happy to be playing as a professional. I was happy to be getting $500 a week. I was ecstatic. Like, it was, you're telling me you're going to play hockey? Like, that was the point where I was at in my first couple of years. Like, I can do this and not have another job? Like, sign me up.
Sign me up.
Exactly, right? So, I mean, it was, I had some great stories out of the East Coast Hockey League. I don't know how much time you have for one more story.
Please. We're going long here today. I'm all for it. Lay it on me.
So I'm in Wheeling, my second year in Wheeling, and I signed a one-way contract with Wheeling. So any team in the league, in the AHL, can call me up. So the previous season, I was with Wilkes-Barre. They never had any injuries. I had a phenomenal season, but if nobody has any injuries, you're not going to get called up. So I decided with my agent and with my family that I was going to take a little bit less money. I'm going to sign a one-way East Coast deal, so anybody in the league could call me up if they need a player. Because I'd spent 2 very successful seasons in the East Coast Hockey League, and really had only played a handful of games.
Yeah, it's time to go up here.
Yeah. So, and I knew my soon-to-be wife was graduating from university, and I was starting to feel the pressure of possible marriage or bringing her. And honestly, with the East Coast back then, $500 a week to bring your wife with you, I mean, it's just makes it a little bit tougher, right? So a couple months into that season, I get called up from Cleveland, and that's when I get on the line with Marcel Gotch, Ryan Clough. Things just start clicking, and things are just going well. And this is the lockout season in 2004, whatever the lockout.
04, 05 was the lockout year. That's right.
And so things are going well. I'm on their top line, top power play unit, and that's the season that Edmonton has the Edmonton Roadrunners as their AHL team, because the Oilers weren't playing. They never had a Western Hockey League team at that time. And so that's only a couple hours from my hometown. So my parents and friends, it's the first time to be able to see me play pro hockey. They decide we got 60 tickets for that game, right? So day before we fly out, Cleveland GM calls me into his office and says, Jason, we're going to have to send you down. And I'm honestly, I'm looking around thinking I'm on a camera.
Yeah, where's Ashton Kutcher? I'm getting punked right now.
There's no way they're sending down their first line left winger right now. I mean, not only are we one of the worst teams in the league, if you send me down, you're gonna hear it from all the media and stuff. And so I'm like, no, what's happening? He goes, I've let your visa expire. Not only do you have to leave the team, but you have to leave the country. And so as he says that, my heart just drops. This is my first opportunity. I finally made the AHL. I'm on a team. I'm settled in on a team. I'm successful. We're talking with San Jose about a possible contract. And now you tell me not only can I not play for you, but I have to leave the country. And so I remember leaving that arena that night in tears. I was crying. I was thinking my hockey career is done. I mean, at this point, we had Hamilton, Manitoba, and St. John's were in the AHL. But I wasn't an established player. I wasn't, or in Edmonton also. I wasn't an established AHL player. I wasn't, and I was on the worst team in the league. Nobody was going to give me a chance with their team, especially during the lockout when you're
the talent pool is a lot thicker.
And so I literally drove back to Wheeling. My coach in Wheeling is, so pissed off he could barely even speak to me because he's just lost his top potential player that he was hoping to get back at some time throughout the season. I pack up my apartment. I just start driving north to Winnipeg. And I'm on the phone with my agent. I'm on the phone with my girlfriend, with my mom at the time. And I'm like, the only saving grace I had was Victoria had East Coast hockey team at that time. And I was like, my East Coast stats have been very good. They will take me. But that wasn't the point. The point was I was losing my chance in the AHL.
Right.
And so I was driving north, and I was a couple hours into my trip, and I get a phone call from Craig Heisinger, who St. John's knows as the GM of
Singer.
And he goes, Jason Jaffray, this is Craig Heisinger, GM of the Manitoba Moose. He goes, I got a couple players sick tonight. Can you be in Hamilton for 7:30? And at that time, I had the little screen GPS on the front of my
where were you?
Ford Explorer, and I punch it in, and it says I got it's 2:00 in the afternoon. It says it's going to be like a 7-hour drive, and I say I'll be there.
Hell yeah!
And I flip a Yui on the highway, and I just start driving the other direction. And I'm Ford Explorer at this time. That is,
you could probably move a good clip.
Yeah. Shouldn't be going 180, but it's going 180 down the road. And I had a gas station sub for my
pregame.
I get into Cops Coliseum in Hamilton as the team's coming off the ice from. I didn't have time to get into a suit, so I'm in jeans, backwards hat, literally throw my hockey bag over my shoulder, and I stroll into the dressing room, and these guys Lee Gorin and a couple of the veterans start writing fines up there, like no tie, $100, missed warm up, $100, and just starts writing all these fines up on the board. And I'm just happy to be there. I've been in a car for 7 hours now. My legs are stiff as a board. I don't get to go out for warm up. So I throw on my gear and I'm out there for the first shift of the game. Well, it's a nationally televised Sportsnet game. Hamilton, Manitoba. So my family does get to watch me back home, but just on TV. We end up losing 3-1, but I scored the only goal.
Stop it. How does the story keep going?
I know. And so I scored the only goal. Alexander Burrows, we were both kind of rookies. He passed it from the corner. I tapped. It wasn't pretty, but I tapped it in back door. Got third star of the game. And after the game, I still hadn't really realized what was going to happen in the future. If I had a spot on this team, what was going to happen. If this was a one-game thing, I was going to fly back or jump in my vehicle and drive back to Calgary, or what was going to happen. And it just so happened after the game, Craig Heisinger came up to me, said, hey, he's like, I'm going to fly somebody in to drive your vehicle home. He's like, you're on the team flight with us tomorrow.
No.
And 5 years or 3 years later, I'm playing in for the Vancouver Canucks. Like, that was the absolute
unreal.
That was the phone call that absolutely changed my life. And when I retired a couple months ago or a month ago, I called Craig Heisinger and I just said, I just want to thank you for it. That was the time that absolutely made my career. I thought my career was done. Not only was forced to leave the country, visa problems, all this kinds of stuff, into playing for the Manitoba Moose. I didn't get to play in the playoffs that year, but the year later, I've had 50 points. 2 years later, I had 85 points and had an NHL contract on my lap. And season after that, I scored in my first NHL game. Like, it was everything kind of rolled from there. And Craig Heisinger, he just says, no, he's like, stop it. Stop talking. He goes, you're the one that took advantage of your opportunities. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I did, but without the opportunity, you never know what would have happened.
Bingo.
And so that's always a story I love to tell people. Like, right when you think that you're at the all-time bottom of your career and it might not get any worse, I was thinking I'm going to go home and drive a fertilizer truck for my dad's farming company. Like,
it's a living.
Boom. All of a sudden, 2-3 years later, I'm a Vancouver Canuck living the absolute dream, what everybody thinks about every day. So.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that story. That's crazy. I had a few people in the chat here that knew bits and pieces of it, but I'm so glad to hear it. One more question before we let you scoot, and I'm going to jump back in on that Cleveland team. First of all, I have to ask, any dirt on Chloe? I assume he would have been a pretty young fella then. He's still pretty terrifying up these parts. I don't mind saying that. So what can you tell me about rookie Ryan Clough?
You know what? That was the thing with that team. Probably the reason why we only won 16, 17 games is we never had an older guy to lean on to kind of show us how to be a professional. And so we probably did some dumb things back then. That's just young and dumb hockey players. I mean, everybody is probably doing things they shouldn't have when it came to going out and having a few beers or doing this or that. But really, I remember my time with Ryan Clough with a lot of ping pong in his apartment with Josh Georges, and
cool.
Really, we didn't get into too much trouble. We were always very chill. Cleveland is kind of at that time was a low key city run by. That was when LeBron James was just kind of coming into his own.
That's right.
So we got to see a couple of games. We were playing in the same stadium as him, so we ran into him in the hallway a couple of.
What?
So it was a city that was very much run by the Cleveland Cavaliers. So nobody really knew who the Cleveland Barons were at the time. So we could go out and have a beer at the bar down the street. Nobody would know twice if it was who we were. So very different to St. John's, where you would head down to Greensleeves or one of those places, and they kind of knew who you were, and it was. So it was. I got no dirt on Chloe. We were good buddies. We went and spent all-star break together down in Miami one time. Cool. Had some fun down there. Spent a few days down in Miami, down on South Beach. But he's a great guy. I was glad to see that he got on with the Growlers. I know he was still kind of having some health issues, but glad to see that he's back and back somewhat involved in the game. And I'm glad to see it.
I got to ask, a quick look down that roster. Chloe ended up an ECHL head coach. Nick Bootland, head coach of the Kalamazoo Wings. Riley Armstrong, head coach of the Maine Mariners. Jason Jaffray?
You know what? Riley Armstrong sent me a message the other day trying to get me to come down to Maine with them. So you never know.
I hope you turned him down for the sake of your Newfoundland brethren.
I told him, I said, you know what? I would love to stay in the game eventually. Obviously, this COVID-19 situation's kind of into everybody's plans. Everybody's kind of back on the back burner, not really knowing what's going on. But I've been able to spend a lot of quality, good time with my family here over the last months, which has been great. And eventually I see my wife getting sick of me and telling me to go find a job somewhere else because she's used to me traveling so much. But
that's right.
You never know. I stay in contact. That's one thing throughout my hockey career is I never burned any bridges. I tried to stay in contact with as many people as in all the places I played as possible. I mean, I still send Danny Williams a message every once in a while just to say hi, up, and even I still got a lot of good friends in St. John's. That I think my wife's best friend is still in St. John's.
No way.
Say hi to the Susies if they're listening. It's awesome. I hope to get a chance to return one day, and
please do.
It would be great to come and watch a Growlers game and maybe drop a puck at one of the games or something like that. Would be a cool experience.
Oh, don't tease us, Jeff. Don't tease us. I think that's going to do it. We've already taken you along here tonight. Again, on behalf of everyone in the St. John's hockey community, thank you for all of your tireless work for us on and off the ice during your time here in St. John's. Congratulations again on a wonderful career. And Jason Jaffray, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
So that's going to do it here for the show here tonight. On behalf of all of us, let me get through my thank yous very quick. You'd swear I was organized. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Molson Coors. Thank you to John and Kenny back at headquarters for keeping this running. Thanks to all of you for sticking around here tonight. Make sure you get your season tickets, your Regiment Gold membership, still on sale now, nlgrowlers.com. And again, thank you to Molson Coors for help making this all possible. Make sure to join us again next week. We are going to have Zach Fucali and James Meillindy. The week after that, we're going to have a three-way conversation, myself, Sam Jardine, and Zach O'Brien. It's going to be so awesome. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. I'm Chris Ballard. If you missed the show, you're not hearing this right now, but you can catch it online in the next couple of days. Thanks again, folks. We'll see you next Thursday. Bye-bye. The Growler out.